entertainment purposes only, not to be taken as legal advice. Happy day after Labor Day weekend, everybody, as I look forward to our learning as we go into a new series of the Patrick Devine files of his final process. We have started over the last 4 months covering 2 huge series. The first one being establishing a UCC Contract Trust, which is your first foundational documentation that Patrick Devine went into. Then we went briefly into what I call the remedy series. We talked about the 1099-A, the B, the C, and the OID and how it is applied by Patrick Devine himself. And then we went through administrative process and notary protests and talked about negotiable instruments and bills of exchanges. Now we're going into our new series, which is correcting your status. It is huge. I cannot tell you how important and foundational it is. And very lucky, it is also part of the Patrick Devine final process. It is important to note that while I'm your guide in this course, I am not the originator of this information. The insights we will explore have been brought to light by many great gurus, including Patrick Devine. His tireless research and dedication led him to uncover a remedy for freeing oneself from the monetary system. After 9 years and over 5,560 documents, essays, and submissions to various governmental entities, Patrick Devine discovered the key to liberation in 2016. Then he disappeared and said, now it's up to you to set yourselves free. This live course with 100 students will cover the final process of Patrick Devine's great works, as well as information from others who helped him along the way. Let's begin. I'm super excited about this series, everybody. I am correcting your status is really what we're all about doing in this truth movement, is to distinguish ourselves from a for-profit United States citizen under the corporate United States. What we're going to be doing is I'm going to be going meticulously over the correct your status documentation and paperwork. And let me tell you, I've done the correct your status years ago, and it has changed every aspect of my life on how I've been interacting with police officers, how I'm viewed at airports, how I pull up on government databases, how my tax status has changed, and also how I'm viewed as an American national, non-resident alien, and so on. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go through this documentation and paperwork step by step. This particular file is found in the Patrick Devine files. I wanted to share this with you because if you email creditoracademy@gmail.com, you're going to see a file folder that's beyond file 42. And I want to kind of just share that with you so you see what I mean. So if you have never seen the Patrick Devine files before, this is kind of what they look like, or this is what they look like. They start all the way at the bottom and they're numbered numerically. One, there's the transcripts, the forms. You know, this is 9 years ago when he first got his start. And when he started making huge discoveries like how to do the private mailing system, how to deal with identity theft, the big one, which was the foreign grantor trust, estate banking, the postal mail system, and so on, passport banking. I gave everyone, if you email creditoracademy@gmail.com, files 37 through 42. And as you're going to see, 41 really gears up the final process. That's why it's called the final process. And the final process encumbers, from my research, files 37 up to 42, and everything that he did. And that's been great. Now, if you go beyond 42, For some reason, it jumps up to 47. But there's all of these other series, which is called the X files, like I like to call them. The X files are a collection of documentation from Patrick Devine and his action group when he started to leave the scene. And one of these files that we're going to go over extensively is called Correct Your Status. And I got to tell you, these documents in itself that are inside this file are in, no matter what guru you go to, they're in every SPC process, secured party creditor process, when they're sending information to the Treasury Department, to the State Department, and so on. So in this series, I'm going to cover every single one of those documents. I'm going to keep nothing from you. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I cover them thoroughly, like I did in the final process of Patrick Devine in the earlier files. And we're going to go through them step by step. And they go in a particular order as well. So we're going to really cover that in detail. Now, why is it important to correct your status? So I'm going to give you an example on the difference of the on doing these files and the submissions and how it affects everything. I remember I had a friend of mine where we were doing our passports, the DS-11 forms. The DS-11 forms are all about you getting your passport. And if you fill it out in a certain way to reflect your jurisdiction, you can go ahead and get in return an updated passport with a star system that is in accordance to your new status. Now, me and my friend, we did this DS-11 at the same time in the state of Washington, and we both sent them out. What happened was we both filled it out almost exactly the same. We expedited it, and we received it almost at the exact same time with a day or two difference. Now, here's the huge difference, though, between our passports. It was our star rating. His star rating was a 4-star rating, and mine was a 3-star rating along with it. The difference between what I did differently and what my friend did differently was this. I had submitted months and months beforehand all the correct your status documentation that was already on file. So that documentation was reflected into my passport, where it was not with my friend who did not submit any documentation. So correcting your status really changes how you're seen in the government system. And you have to clearly communicate it as well, because this affects how you privately travel, how you're filing your taxes and what tax status you fall under, and so on. So we'll go into great detail about that today. I'm very excited about this series because it's so important. And I get to do it live. I get to do it live and answer your questions for it. Now, before we get into today's series of the Patrick Devine Files, I got to answer a lot of questions for the people who got our business trust course. I'm going to do it really fast just to answer the questions. The people who got our business trust course by emailing classes@creditoracademy.com, you already completed the course. You've been emailing me and you've been asking what I consider advanced trust questions, because you got beyond the basics with the course. We covered over 40 topics of how to operate in the private in extreme detail and supplied you with every document that you need to go into the private. And I've been even answering your email questions as well. So this is, hey, for those who got the business trust course, I'm here to just answer high level, some things to think about. And I'm going to put this in I'm going to put this inside of resources taught in class in our auto response at creditoracademy@gmail.com. You send an email. So here's it is, the quick list. I'm going to go through it quickly, and then we have to get into today's lesson because we have a lot to cover. So these are the advanced trust strategies, okay? Below is the short list of various applications and structures you can use any variety of different trust types and statutory business organizations to create a specific outcome. We start with the end in mind, then design a structure. So we're going to go through some of the examples. Let's start with divide marital property, okay? This is a big one. How does a business trust affect me as a married person? Married couples divide joint assets for safety. Rather than 50% of 100%, each spouse owns 100% of 50%. Name the other spouse as a successor beneficiary, and then you won't be exposed to 100% of the assets to risk. Okay, so that's a big one with couples that are already married on how to deal with their current assets. Now, for those who are not married and are kind of considering, well, what's an alternative to a prenuptial agreement? A business trust is used hugely in this regard. The standard prenuptial agreement is always complicated, emotionally fraught, and subject to legal challenge. If you use a business trust to legally isolate assets in advance, you can get bigger and better protection from your spouse taking that. So very important to do. Next, I've done these. Again, I have so many business trusts. It's insane. I've done these two following structures. For those of you who've got an LLC, for more protection, make the LLC the beneficiary of your trust. We talked about in our business trust course how to choose your beneficiaries, an entity versus a person and whatnot. Well, the LLC is great as a pass-through company, okay? Like I have an LLC as a beneficiary and I have control over that LLC, and then I get huge tax advantages, but I still have flexibility. Now, when it comes to a trustee, okay, think about this. The trust in Inc. option. For additional privacy, the corporation is your trustee. If you incorporate in any state you wish, for mine it's Washington, if corporation is a nominee only for holding title, greater privacy and reduced filings. Listen, the greatest individual that has the most amount of risk in a trust structure, which is the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiaries, the trustee has all of the fiduciary responsibility to manage the trust appropriately. So if you as the individual don't want all the risk, like I don't want all the risk, I want the most amount of protections as much as possible. So I use a C Corp to be the trustee. I'm the CEO of the C Corp, and then I hire all of the employees of the C Corp to help me manage the trust. But the employees of the C Corp are not trustees. It's just me who's in control of that corporation. I hope that makes sense. Grantor and non-grantor strategy. Use a C Corp as a trustee to create a non-grantor adversarial relationship. It's kind of what I said. Works best with married couples due to unlimited tax-free gifting. And that's what I love it for. It's a huge advantage. I'm going to go over just a couple other things. How long is this list? Okay. Jurisdiction. I'm always covering jurisdiction. We're going to really get into that with your Correct Your Status series today. But create a diversity of jurisdiction. Form a real estate trust in a high tax state under the laws of another while using a foreign corporation as a trustee to establish domicile of the trust. This is where your foreign grantor trust comes in, okay? And I'm here to tell you huge advantages for creating that diversity within the trust. Great. I have a lot of these. I don't want to go too much into it. I'm going to go into one last one, which is the C Corp. Company founder in high personal income tax state. Let me tell you, California, where I'm talking about you, and New York. Low basis stock in 1202 filing. Legal petition for new domicile. This gives you 0 state income tax and $10 million tax-free. That in itself is worth its weight in gold. For you operating in California and operating in New York, I would seriously consider a business trust for how you're operating your business, because you're getting raked over the coals. And I'm talking to a lot of you in California and in New York and other high tax states that are asking me these questions. So I wanted to have just a brief moment to cover a few advanced trust strategies. If you would like to be a part of our business trust course, you can email classes@creditoracademy.com. We have 2 business trust course, a quick start. The quick start is great if you want to start a business today in the private. You get all the documents, you get a quick tutorial, you know just enough to get off the gun, run into the races, and it's a huge advantage. And you're not shaking your hands and making a deal with the Secretary of State, which is what it's all about. If you want the full series, the full business trust course, then that's a great option. This is every tip and trick to cover and operating the private, how to open up bank accounts, get lines of credit, DUNS numbers, how to do your taxes, employees and contractors, and teaches you the basics of how to run and operate a business trust. And we give you a bunch of resource material to go along with it. Okay, with all of that being said, let's get into today's lesson. So we now start with correcting your status document. This is one of the first documents you should always start with, which is your declaration of status. Always start with your declaration, okay? So this is Patrick Devine's Declaration of Status document. And we're going to go over this. I don't know if we'll be able to get through the whole document today. I might have to split it up, but we're going to cover as much as we can. Okay. Patrick Devine, the restoration of former status from being a public United States citizen, a federally owned U.S. citizen as of March 9th, 1933, and a taxpayer bondman put to tribute as of September 8, 1936. To becoming once again of American national private citizen of the United States to Section 1 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution for the United States of America. Okay. So Patrick writes, accordingly, I, Patrick P. Devine, affiant, formerly known as Patrick Devine in some cases, in essence of sui juris, good reason and good conscience, hereby make oath, depose and declare that the following facts are true, correct, and complete to the best of my knowledge and belief. Really good starter statement right there, because again, your declaration of status document is the foundational document by how you correct your status. And remember, if you know this document and people ask you about correcting your status and what it means to operate in the jurisdiction that you are, this is the document that I always refer to. So I, Patrick P. Devine, do solemnly declare and affirm the following historical facts and distinctions with regard to the status of de jure private American national citizenship. Said original federal citizenship secured by Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution of the United States of America, having been broadened into national citizenship by Section 1 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Once again, we're always going back to Article 4. You are the 4th branch of government, okay? And he's already making that distinction. This is where the ID as an Article 4 individual banker and bounty hunter come into play. So he's always restating this facts of his status. And now this document is going to reflect even more his badge and ID. So, and on other hand, a state-created statutory de facto public U.S. citizenship as the basis enabling a correction of mistake by this declaration. So already he says, hey, there's a mistake here. I'm not a state-created statutory de facto public U.S. citizen, okay? So he's already making that distinction. This de facto public U.S. citizenship being in substance likened to a privileged Roman citizen. All roads lead to Rome. Would enable the constitutionally de jure civilian government of the United States, having been constitutionally altered from being a de jure federal government to a de jure national government by the 14th Amendment. Okay, so he's going from the de jure treasury into the de jure national government. To be replaced congressionally created statutory de facto emergency war powers military government of the United States on March 9th, 1933. This current de facto government in many ways has in fact replaced the constitutional de jure jurisdiction of the United States. The United States being the collective name of the states which are united by and under the Constitution, according to Hooven and Allison Co. Okay, he's giving a history lesson here. He just says, we were born, we were screwed in 1933, you changed our status, I want to be a national once again under what? Article 4. Okay? As an American national citizen, the posterity of the people that created these United States, further, that unilateral contract was the application for the birth certificate, public filing of a certificate of live birth. The American application for birth certificate, certificate of live birth, by operation of law, would be the contract to alter the de jure private American citizenship. So what was the contract that screwed us? The certificate of live birth. And this is where the Sister KV Trust will come in here in just a little bit. By operation of the law, would be the contract to alter the de jure private American national citizenship, U.S. citizenship, with this presumption of fact of an existing contract held by every individual public U.S. citizen holding its private American national citizen of the United States as property in surety. Every court legally sits in a martial concurrent jurisdiction in which the forms of law and equity, we went over this in the remedy series, everything's through law and equity, have been merged, enforcing the statutes of the Emergency War Powers Congress on the unsuspecting citizens. This de facto status enables and obligates all federal and state courts to sit this state of emergency, subverting the common law jurisdiction of the United States, as per Section 1 of the 13th Amendment and Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, by rendering ineffective the constitutional status of de jure private American national citizens of the United States of America. That is so important. If you get nothing else from this document, take that sentence into heart. This is the heart of the whole document. The de facto status enabled us to be federal and state employees, which brought us out from the common law and from the law and equity. And what it did was it put us into the jurisdiction by which we are under war times. What did he say in here? Emergency War Powers Congress, okay? This is why they're able to subvert the constitutional laws. It's because of these emergency war powers. So, as of March 6th of 1933, all public U.S. citizens with their surety property, private American national citizens, were seized as booty of war by President Franklin Roosevelt Marshall under the Emergency War Powers Proclamation of 2039, which practically overthrew the sovereignty of the people of the United States of America, reducing them to being mere property of a de facto military government sitting in Washington, D.C. What an SOB. I can't believe he did that. That was so monumental to the difference on how we're operating today. To be treated as rebels and belligerents. Remember when Patrick Devine said, when you are showing your badge, when you're showing your ID, what do you want to be? Non-combative. We are peaceful protesters. But in their books, they have us labeled under this new status as rebels and belligerents. And this is why they oppress us the way that we do and take away our rights, because we fall under that. That's why in the other paperwork, when we submitted as bounty hunters, you know, we're non-combative. We're peaceful. We're just looking for our fugitive. So living in the 50 states deemed by the conqueror commander-in-chief to be merely occupied territories, the seized state governors ruling their de facto military governments in subordination to the Washington, D.C. That's all it is. Washington, D.C., those square miles control us. It's its own country, a foreign country. Therefore, finding the situation of statutory altered private American national citizenship status intolerable, unconscionable, and at variance and in conflict with the originally established courts of common law, as well as the courts or exclusive inherent equity chancery governed solely by the maxims of equity. I, Patrick Paul of Devine, do make oath, solemnly declare and affirm that one, whereas the franchise corporate sole Creditor Trust, via the application for the birth certificate and or the birth certificate, hereinafter birth certificate, being in fact a unilateral contract under seal, was created and offered legally through deceit, in effort alters within the current government the status of we the people. Wow. Which includes every individual private American national citizen. First of our sovereignty as a people, then of our constitutionally created status, and ultimately our lives, fortunes, and our sacred honor. There's no honor in being a corporate slave because you're a slave. They took you through the UCC Trust under contract by mama. Mama signed you away, and dad was a witness. And what did they assign you away to? They signed you away through this trust to the trustee. The trustee has absolute power and dominion and control over the trust for the benefit of the beneficiaries. Who's the beneficiaries? That's you. You're named under that UCC Trust as a beneficiary. So what's this trustee going to do with you? What do they think is in your best interest? Well, if they disagree with your parents because they already see your parents as combatives, you know, they say, you know what, I'm gonna get CPS involved and remove the beneficiary from mom and dad. Oh, in the best interest of your protection, I'm going to tax this trust and take all your commercial assets and utilize it for what I think your benefit is. You don't get access to your credits. The trustee has access to your credits. And what are they doing with your credits? They're bonding and insuring them. under performance and payment bonds that are combined surety bonds. And they're using it for their own profit gain. If you ask me, that's a breach of your fiduciary responsibilities. And this is why we are in establishing a UCC Contract Trust. We're kicking out the government. That's all it is saying, you're not the trustee anymore. I'm the trustee. I have control over the Sister KV Trust, and I'm going to go ahead and do what's right for me as the beneficiary. So there's that. Going to, whereas the true purpose of the birth certificate, a unilateral contract under seal, is to be a covert commercial agreement and unconscionable by we the people. Adhesion contract, a quasi-contract between the state and the baby's natural birth and the mother of the baby. The baby then deemed property of the federal de facto military government of the United States. The birth certificate being recorded by the Department of Commerce, then to serve as the collateral securities for the unquestionable public debt as per Section 4 of the 14th Amendment. Number 3, whereas the true nature of the date of filing on the birth certificate, a unilateral contract under seal, is to commence the legal birth of the quasi-corporate artificial person U.S. citizenship. So is it the date of your birth that is the contract? No, it's saying that the contract under the seal is what brings it into, commence it into a legal birth. So once the contract is confirmed, then by the de facto government, that's when you are really come into being. So created all by necessary legal elements of the unilateral contract, it being in writing, signed, sealed, and delivered for registration, and filed with a public office of the baby's state of live birth. This is why when you have children, you need to do private birth registration. I cannot stress to you enough how important that is. I want to show you what a private birth certificate looks like. I've used this in my situation. Here's an example of what a private birth certificate looks like. Looks pretty similar, right, to a normal one. It's got your city, it's got your state, it's got the child's name, it's got the sex, it's got the mother's, the father's name, and then you put your private registration number. And then I put at the very bottom, this is a true and correct live birth record, privately filed and notice given to the state of Washington Department of Public Health. My registration number was my registered mail number when I privately mailed it back to myself through the postal system.
Excuse me, Paul.
No, not a time for questions. This is
I'm just asking if you're showing the document or not.
Yes, I am.
I'm not seeing it.
I get you. It is showing. I see it on my end. Thank you so much. I appreciate your input on that. On the side is gold leaf. This is your gold leaf bond. So this is an example of a private registration. Amazing. I wanted to show an example of that. So the next section, which is whereas the true nature of the date of birth of the baby named on the birth certificate is to commit the natural person's private American natural citizenship as surety for and personal property of the state created. Artificial person, public U.S. citizen, both entities being legally wedded into one legal entity, the hybrid, a federally owned public U.S. citizen. So as you're seeing, Patrick Devine is making his case by giving a history lesson. So number 5 is whereas the birth certificate is a business instrument because it's operating in commerce, recorded with the county recorder a subsidiary of the Secretary of State, of the several states treated as a conquered territories. Also sent to the Bureau of Census, a division of the Department of Commerce in Washington, D.C., placing the name of the public U.S. citizen into interstate and foreign world commerce as statutory legal person, as corporations, partnerships, trusts, corporate souls, etc., distinct and separate from the natural-born citizen, i.e., the private American national citizen. What this section tells you right here, right off the bat, is your birth certificate or your certificate of live birth is being traded on the world market. So all of these borrowings that are happening or trade deals are backed by every new baby that's born by contract. And so now all of these contracts are utilized as leverage to get what? More money, to create more bonds, to make more for-profit corporations in the benefit of the state. Whereas the Secretary of State of the several states charters corporations and issues franchises. Therefore, any natural-born citizen, a private American national citizen with a birth certificate, is liable to the Franchise Board of the State Department of Revenue for income excise, privilege taxes, as well as being liable to the Internal Revenue Service, collecting the internal revenue for the federal corporations of the United States. This is why a non-resident alien gets out of the federal corporate tax system through the Internal Revenue Service. This is why they escape the income excise privilege taxes, is they're outside of their purview because they're not part of a charter. A charter could be the Department of Licensing. It could be the Department of State is a charter. The Department of Health is a charter. All of these are charters where they're trying to contract with you under their jurisdiction in order to what? Tax you. Whereas the birth certificate, functioning as a business instrument, has deceived the private American national citizen. Patrick P. of Devine allegedly named on said certificate into an unknown and covert implied contract by operation of law, and had placed affiant and fellow private American national citizens under an alien, foreign, and yet temporary de facto military jurisdiction of the United States, created at first by the Emergency Banking Relief Act in its initial paragraphs, containing a congressionally amended World War I statute known as Trading with the Enemy Act, and codified as 12 USC 95A, and secondly, by then President Franklin D. Roosevelt under the Emergency War Powers Proclamation 2040, decreed on March 9th, 1933. Whereas the above de facto jurisdiction of the United States includes the jurisdiction of the constitutionally created federal and state civilian courts in form, sitting in a martial Roman equity at law. In substance, they are no longer proceeding against the accused private American national citizen with the mode of common law civilian due process, but rather with the mode of Roman civil law martial due process, that if unchallenged by producing state-filed public records and other prima facie evidence, will confer a martial jurisdiction over the accused, being then forced to plead in court-imposed martial due process and procure derived from a congressionally amended World War I statute as of March 9th, 1933, the judges, federal and state, acting on behalf of the de facto military dictator, commander-in-chief sitting in Washington, D.C. To summarize this, the Roman civil law under martial due process is for who? It's for the combatants. It's for what they labeled you as. You're a combatant. And as a combatant, what are you going to get? You're going to get martial due process. That's martial law. What happens during martial law when all of the chaos and anarchy is happening? The military sent in, and the commander-in-chief makes a decision under the judges and federal and state jurisdiction acting on behalf of the military are going to stop you. And this is why they trample on your rights. Whereas upon the public filing of the birth certificate with its attached private American citizen serving as surety and personal property, another source was created that would generate income, which could then be income excise privilege tax. The natural person, baby, private American national citizen now weeded to his new artificial person, the U.S. citizen. At his property and subordinate surety, the new source deemed as a rebel and belligerent, residing accordingly to state statutes in a state deemed an occupied territory. Being in commerce and subject to absolute legislative powers of the temporary emergency war powers Congress to regulate without limited interstate and foreign commerce pursuant to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the United States Constitution. During this time of a temporary declared state of natural emergency, now 2016, it is 83rd year. Whereas affiant, a private American national citizen, has presently ceased to be a surety for the personal property of the public U.S. citizen, Patrick Paul Devine, all caps, by means of a duly filed release with consideration nunc pro tunc ab initio and recession of signatures of surety sitch, nunc prunc tunc ab initio, thereby returning to the former status of being a private American national citizen, held for less than 20 days after infant's natural birth. Affiant, in essence, has irrevocably separated himself from the state-created franchise corporate soul. The United States citizen, which was created by means of publicly filed birth certificate, affiant hereby revokes all powers, including, but not limited to, power of attorney or agency that affiant may have granted to any third-party public and or private organization, I would say. Therefore, affiant does not consent and is not a party to FDR's contract with all U.S. citizens by means of Proclamation 2040, confirmed and approved by Congress in its passage of the Emergency Banking Proclamation or Emergency Banking Relief Act, and then thereby amending the Trading with the Enemies Act. Therefore, affiant is not in commerce, as are corporations, never to enjoy any commercial privilege of limited liability as a matter of United States citizenship status, as do corporations being public U.S. citizens, having discharged all de facto emergency war power military governments, federal and state, from any duty or obligation arisen from affiant being the property surety for and or weeded to the state-created hybrid, the federally owned public U.S. citizen in service of Washington, D.C. for the commerce and war. Declaring your status is so important. It is by which they will treat you in the future. If you are walking around and identifying yourself with their franchise government issue identification without properly declaring yourself between the distinction of a belligerent, a combatant to their corporate military funded franchise, and not in the de facto de jure, in the de jure republic as a American national citizen, you're not going to get very far. You're not going to get very far. And this is why, as part of the Patrick Devine Final Process, correcting your status is not only optional, but it's necessary if you're going to operate as an individual banker under the U.S. Republic. And this is why all of your documentation, whether you update your passport or you utilize your private identification documents, you need to have a reference to that declaration of status documents. And you do that by just starting with, there's many more documents we will cover in the Declaration of Status series or correcting your status series, but the Declaration of Status document is by far your foundation. Actually, I would say that this document in particular, Patrick Devine, when I came across it, is how I describe my whole movement that I'm a part of, is that distinction from the for-profit corporations that got us into this situation through that Sister KV trust when they deceived our mothers into signing the birth certificate and having our fathers as witnesses. That's why establishing a UCC Contract Trust, the first section of the series, is why I started, because it's all about establishing a new order to that trust. So then when you get to this point of doing your declaration of status documents, you're in harmony. Every guru, no matter who you follow, brings these two together. That's the harmony of the situation. This is what removes you from their martial law of control. Thank you for being with us during that presentation. This will be part 1 of your Correcting Your Status series, and I will go further into detail about it on this coming Thursday, where we'll cover the rest of that document. I'm going to go ahead and take questions about specifically correcting your status. Todd Pollard, let's start with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right?
I can.
All right, super. I hear you well. I followed closely the document, and I've been watching for the last month or so, probably 3 months or so, your previously recorded versions of classes, and I think they're fabulous. My question is very specific. How can I actually get myself a copy of the document that you just presented to us? I don't see it in any of the links that I was provided.
Absolutely. If you email Creditor Academy at gmail.com, you're going to see a document file, which is files presented in class. I do my best to take documents that I present in class, and within 24 to 48 hours, make sure to put it inside of that file. So if you have access to to that file deck that you get in our auto response, you should see that in there later on this week.
I see. Should see it later. Okay, so I wouldn't. Okay, so I was actually thinking I was going to be able to follow it on my own hard drive while you were presenting it. But
I'll make sure that you have access to that before this Thursday, so then you can follow along.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. Crown in the rights of the Commonwealth. Let's go to you.
Greetings, everyone. I've probably asked this question before, but I'll repeat it once again for anyone else that may have come on board. How do we apply any of these clauses in the status correction outside of the framework of the United States Corporation, the United States?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? This is a great question because you know, almost every country has their own version of the republic. And then the bankers came along. There's the history of the bankers is as old as the Bible, like since the beginning. They come in, they see the monetary system of a flourishing society, and then they say to themselves, how do I circumvent control over this society through banking? And that's what they do. The bankers come in and circumvent that control and now exchange assets that have monetary value that are stacked behind it, like gold or silver or platinum or something like that, and create monopoly money. So let me ask you this. When did the bankers circumvent Australia?
Well, it was a gradual process, I would say.
Yeah.
It began probably in 1835, really, through the Global Asset Trust, and in New Zealand, where New Zealand being the head of the snake, and Australia being connected via New South Wales as the body of the snake.
Yeah.
Through the treaty.
Yeah. My friend, that's exactly it. Because when you see us in America refer to 1933, that's when they took control. The Federal Reserve came in around Christmas time when we were opening up our presents, and they said, gotcha, I'm in. I took all your money in gold. It's gone. It's now, now it's just funny money. So we always in America talk about 1933. That's when our dollar started being diminished. We started having all of the, the birth certificates started coming into play. Everything came about and changed since 1933. I could argue that maybe even a decade or two earlier, things were really ramping up as well, like 1913, especially. But 1933, that's when the whore of Babylon came here, and getting rid of her has been such a struggle next. So I would go back to whenever you had your monetary system taken out, and that would be your reference.
More importantly is how do we enforce it? Because we have the information, and we can send it off to all the government agencies. But firstly, it's all those crown agencies may receive it and do nothing with it. And secondly, it would be how do we present that to any of the belligerent occupying policy enforcers that are waving around their what do we call it? Their might.
Absolutely. I mean, just as this document that Patrick Devine outlined as the history of what we were going through, I mean, we're under this kind of martial law, under military control. Does that sound like what you guys are going through in Australia?
I'm sure the whole world has seen pictures of
the
that.
Whole world, right? So very simply, though, it feels like they're putting your thumb on you. So the only way that you can get out of that is by allegiance. Who do you have your allegiance to? And what rights are you invoking to be under? And that's what this declaration of status is all about. It's telling the history, it's pointing out the fraud, very clear as day. And it's saying that I revoke my citizenship with the de facto government under this false birth certificate under the Cista KV Trust, and I'm now gaining my ability under the common law to have my commercial rights and my assets controlled by me, the living.
The issue I have is if we were to present any of these status correction or correcting of the records documentations, let's say if we were to have to face a hearing at one of these quasi courts, they cannot see the living, therefore they either throw it out and hear it ex parte, or then issue warrants.
Yeah, yeah, that's part of your defense. They could argue with you. They could say, "Hey, I don't want to be a part. You know, I don't believe you. I'm not going to listen to anything that you say." Actually, I've had it to where you submit documentation, the judge look at me right in the eye and say, "I'm not reading anything that you submit," and I just say, "I don't care. I don't care if you read it. It's your right not to read it, judge, but it's on the record, and that's all that matters. That's all my power. As long as it's on the record, I can always refer to it." And that's the same thing with you guys. What we're doing in America is not too far off from what Australia's got to go through. It's just, it's a little different nuances. So, but yeah, equity court is everywhere.
And how does this status correction involve any instruments that we may present that may soften the impact of any of these belligerent experiences that we might have?
Amazing question. Amazing question. Your absolute and total control and power in that room that is greater than any judge is your commercial affidavit process. That is your only defense in equity and commerce. The cap is the end game. If you do a cap on somebody, like a judge or whatever, you want to get a judge to listen to him, get his wife involved. Why aren't the credit cards working? How come there's a lien on my house? How come the repo man is taking our car? The cap is the enforcement. And not even a superior court judge can remove a cap. And that's where you get your power back.
We mean by cap a commercial lien, is that right?
Commercial affidavit process is what I mean.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, yes, a lien. Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Which we'll go over in a future conversation. But let me go to the next person. But thank you for all your questions so far. Thea, let's go to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you for all this information.
Yeah.
So I was born outside the U.S., but I'm a U.S. citizen. So I'm just kind of wondering how I would make up some of the, this document you presented. I guess I could modify it. And any thoughts on how I could approach this?
Yeah, what country are you in?
I'm in the U.S., but I was born in Sri Lanka.
Girl, we got it. Done. It's already written. 1933.
But I became a U.S. citizen. I was born in Sri Lanka, so that's why I'm asking.
So you got a naturalized citizenship. Right. I got you. Yeah. Yeah. Even your naturalized citizen. Really what it is you're declaring your status in America, which you can do as a naturalized citizen because you took the oath that you'll abide by the Constitution, right?
Yeah.
There you go. Just abide by it. This abides by the Constitution. Being part of the de facto military-run government by the thugs in Washington, D.C. is not what you took your oath under, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's your solution.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Steve Clary, let's go to you.
Paul Michael.
What's up,
great. So, question for you. I'm at the process of needing a new license, a new driver's license. I'm not comfortable yet driving without it and with private plates. What is there regarding the status change? Is there a specific way that I need to go into the DMV in order to, I guess I'm contracting with them to get a new license? Is there anything that I should know or that I can do to get a license and keep my unalienable rights?
I mean, that falls within to not legal advice, but Patrick talked about and other people talked about state IDs, passports, or private identification documentation, right? So I remember when I was getting my home health agency license through the Department of Health here in Washington State, and I had to go through their licensing process and abide by their rules, regulations, and guidelines. I was contracting with them in order to have permission to take care of individuals in healthcare. And the privileges of that is that I can hire, or actually that I could accept certain insurances like long-term care insurance, and if I got approved, Medicaid, Medicare insurance, and so on. But I was contracting with them. And so when they would do audits or review my agency and my paperwork and documentation, I had to abide by their rules and their filing. It's the same thing that you're doing with the Department of Licensing. So even if you have a status correction and you go get a driver's license, you have to abide by the rules and regulations that come along with that. And the rules and regulations that come along with that is that you can't drive your vehicle without certain identification. You have to have certain numbers that are posted on the outside of your vehicle to show that you're within the jurisdiction to drive. You have to abide by the laws of the road. No matter what they are, you have to pay the tolls and so on and so on and so on. And yeah, so that's what you're contracting into.
So I've got a general post office mailing address. Would I be able to use that on my driver's license?
I mean, what does that matter?
Doesn't it keep me out of their jurisdiction if I use that?
No.
Because I'm contracting with that license. So.
Oh yeah, dude, you're showing up inside the Department of Licensing. You're like, "Hey, clerk," and they're like, "Hey, what's up? I'm going to contract with you." She's like, "Great, let's do it." I'm like, "But I got a PO box." "Oh, you got me." Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh man, yeah.
That doesn't negate, like, by getting a driver's license, that doesn't negate all my status correction that I've done, does it?
It does, because everything is operating through contract. So you might have done your status correction, but if you go to an organization and you just say, "Hey, do you want to contract me and you be my slave?" and you say yes, then you're like, doesn't matter what you said before. It's about what you signed and what's current.
Can you sign without recourse, without prejudice?
Yeah, and usually they deny it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. So you can
try putting the word estate after your name and pull it underneath the estate.
Or estate. Well, yeah, I've tried, I've tried a number of ways, but guys, again, you need identification to identify yourself. And it could be any modes of identification, because that's what being at. I mean, when the officer comes up and is like, "I need your driver's license," and you're just like, "Well, I don't have a driver's license." What are they going to say next? "Where's your ID?" They need to identify yourself, right? So if some people say, "Aha, well, I'm just going to use my passport," which does work. Absolutely. I use my passport all the time. Now I use this as my private ID and stuff like that. I got plates and all that are corrected, but yeah. So, but no, passport, private ID. Yeah, just identifying yourself. They're gonna look you up, and when they look you up, their system reflects your status.
Got it. So you're driving without a driver's license. You've got private plates.
Dude, for years I've been doing that. Mm-hmm. Ain't nobody bothered me.
Awesome.
Amazing. All right. Amicus, let's go to you. Amicus.
Questions regarding the driving license
You're muffled. Come to your phone. No, you're muted. Yeah, it's not coming through clearly. It's not coming through clearly. You got to come to your phone. Amazing. Sorry, we could not hear you on that one. Hopefully we'll be able to next time we can. Sorry, but your it's too muted. I want to thank everybody on YouTube who came to today's presentation. This again is part 1 of our new series, which is correcting your status. A very important aspect in this series of Patrick Devine's Final Process. We will continue next time on the rest of this document, where we'll go beyond the history and we'll go into more of the declaration that Patrick Devine is making. I'm super glad to see you all after this Labor Day weekend. I hope that you got some rest and some relaxation. And I'm excited for the lessons that we have in this new series. Thank you all for joining us. If you would like to join us in the future, you can email creditoracademy@gmail.com and receive our auto response to join this live class. If you would like to get access to our business trust course and other classes that we're offering, you can email classes@creditoracademy.com. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and your family. I look forward to seeing you all on YouTube this Thursday.